NSW. People of Reddit who have had sex with an in-law or step-sibling or parent. What happened? How did you get into that situation and did anyone find out? Had fricked my step-cousin. Unknowingly. My parents divorced when I was in grade school. Got on well enough with a stepmom when dad remarried my freshman year in high school. The wedding was low-key and I don't remember much about it. 4 years later I'm at college about 3 hours from my hometown. Big state uni. Stepmom offhandedly has mentioned that her niece goes to this school, but I never got in touch or connected with this person. It was the early mid-90s. A few months into school, I randomly meet a girl at a party. We clicked on a physical level. We didn't really date or go out, but we fricked like monkeys for the rest of the year. Just pure carnality. She lived in a different town about 2 hours from my hometown. Whatever. We exchanged housing info for the next year and went off to have our summer. In late July, stepmom is having a family reunion. She was so excited that I could finally meet her niece and maybe we would be friends and could study or hang out at uni. Cool, whatever. Mom crap. So we go to the reunion. Yup, the girl from college was stepmom's niece that I had spent the previous school year banging. Playing like we didn't know each other, it was an awkward family event. Kinda killed the magic of our lust. We booty called a few times that next school year, but it just fizzled. So, I had fricked my step-cousin. Only her and I, as far as I can tell. No, 11/10 would do again. My college roommate worked at a supermarket. He was banging the married manager of his department for a few months. He then started banging a girl in his class and then started dating. He broke it off with the manager. At some point he and I went clubbing and on the way home he got pulled over for a DUI check. He was sober and gave the cop a hard time being a dong. Long story short, he went to dinner with his girlfriend to meet her parents. Her mom was the manager. Her dad was the cop. I know they broke up soon after. 20 years later and we still joke about it when we get together. No way this happened. It's too perfect. This is about my sister-in-law. My wife and her sister was taken from their biological parents when they were young. Sil 5, wife 2. They were taken due to the father physically shaming them. Well, my Sil never got along with her adopted family like my wife did and still remained in contact with the biological parents. Around when my Sil was 18 she got pregnant and moved back in with her biological family against the adopted family's wishes. She goes dark for a few years besides her randomly contacting my wife trying to get her to come visit the biological parents. My wife obviously refuses. After about 5 years after her first child she gets pregnant again and starts to socialize with my wife again. At this point we realize that she is mentally disturbed. She would refuse to tell us who the father or the new baby is and would talk very highly of her biological parents. After the birth of the baby she finally admitted to my wife that her and her biological father have been fricking regularly for the past few years and he is the baby's father and she didn't seem to grasp how messed up this was. This continued on for 2 more years after the baby was born before she attempted to get out of the relationship with her father. Unfortunately she succumbed to her demons and committed suicide by driving headfirst into a semi with her children in the car. No one survived. These types of relationships are very toxic and if you've been in one you should seek help. This happened to an ex-friend of mine in high school. The day I met her in math class, she kept bragging that she had an older boyfriend who drove a BMW. Turns out that older boyfriend was her stepbrother and nobody knew. Not even their parents. Although I think they suspected, especially when the stepfather found a condom in the brother's room one time after a weekend away. She even got pregnant by this moron and had an abortion, all in secret. Oh, did I mention she was a freshman in high school when all this went down? I'm not surprised. Pornhub has taught me how it happens most of the time. The stepmom is stuck either in a window or has her hand stuck in the sink. She wants help from the stepson who for some reason needs her pants to be off to help. You get better leverage if you take her pants off and prop one of her legs up on the counter while yanking her hips back into you. It may seem crazy but after a lot of pumping, that hand will come right out of the sink drain. One Christmas my uncle brought my future aunt-in-law over to meet everyone. I was 12 and she had big boobs, like, stupidly big boobs. I got binoculars as a gift as part of a kid's spy kit. I thought I was being so clever, pretending to look around the room with them just so I could stealthily. She was sitting 10 feet away. Get a full zoomed in image of those lovely jubblies. I did this for like 30 minutes. Okay, that's hilarious. I had fricked my cousin. Don't know if that counts. It happened when I was 16. She was 18. My parents were gone for the weekend and I taped it. The original Stephen King adaptation. So I could watch it that Saturday evening. My cousin told my aunt and uncle she was going to watch it with me and probably sleep over because it's a long movie. They didn't think anything of it and neither did I. Sure, I always thought she was hot, but that was it. My dad had left a few beers in the fridge and told me we could both have 2. We never really drank, so it affected us more than we thought, and my cousin started teasing me. We ended up sleeping together and I lost my virginity that night. We both liked it though, so we did it again the next morning and we regularly fricked over the course of a couple of months. This all happened 25 years ago and she's happily married with 2 kids. I'm also in a relationship. There never was any weirdness between us over this. We knew exactly what we were doing. I always used a condom and she took the pill. We figured twice as safe. We just enjoyed fricking each other. I had fricked my brother-in-law, and my family do know but pretend not to. My sister was married for a short time to a guy who worked and lived abroad most of the year. I never particularly liked the man. I think he wanted to be married to an attractive younger woman who would pretty much do what he say. Also, it was crazy because he was away 8 months of the year. My sister was young, freaking stupid in a lot of ways, didn't really get on with his friends and family, and generally felt like she'd been abandoned. Anyway, my sister, rather than live at his home when he was away, would move back in with my parents. He gave my sister access to a certain amount of money and much hilarity ensued. So I was in my first year of university, and he found out that my sister had been cheating with him. Not only that, she'd done it with several people he knew, and he was not surprisingly angry. My parents, being idiots, decided to hire a lawyer who made things worse, and then the issue over what was happening with the money came up. So I came home from university and my family were about to be put out of their home. Also, I should mention he'd paid for some of my university expenses. I'm making this way too complicated, but essentially I ended up fricking him in return for him calming down and letting my sister and family climb out of the financial hole they were in. The fricking was pretty weird, and he enjoyed fricking me in my sister's bed way more than he should have. In the end though, he got out of my family's life and that was the end of it. That's fricked. Ex-girlfriend told me she had experiences with her brother when they were both younger. I mean the whole 9 yards. I guess they didn't know it was wrong and thought of it as learning, but she said she even swallowed. Tried to not let it change my opinion, but that is definitely some news. I'm OH, and my ex-boyfriend's dad paid me for fricking 4 years before meeting my ex. Needless to say, we didn't stay together for long after that. Okay, so I'm late and I hope this gets buried. I'm married to my sister. Wait, put the pitchforks and vomit buckets down. She wasn't my sister when I married her. Feel better now? Onto the why. I've known my wife since we were little, like younger than I can remember. Her backyard touched mine. My uncle was best friends with her father. I moved away for a bit, then came back in my early teens. She's about 3 years older than me and had very little interest in me cause it's icky for girls to like younger boys. Then later, after our teens, we reconnected and started dating. Then after I determined she was the right kind of crazy for me, I asked her to marry me. Silly crazy lady said yes. Pretty normal stuff so far, right? Well, during this time both of our parents went to Splitsville with their first marriages. Can you see where this is heading? Her dad and my mom decided, frick it, let's make life awkward for our future generations and get hitched. So now my kids get to call me Uncle Daddy. Thanks so much, Mom. There is an abundance of documentation as to how this sort of thing occurs within the fine video libraries of Pornhub. Type in the letter S, press down and enter, and voila. Fake, gimme the real crap. My stepdad had fricked me for about 2 years. I was 12 and he was 32 when it started. I didn't say anything during that time because he quit yelling, directing anger towards me. He had a lot of violent outbreaks and ended up on seizure medication and Wellbutrin as a form of anger management. But about halfway into freshman year I just wanted to be normal, so hoping to make it stop I told my mom. He told her I was lying and she almost believed him. She got really angry and he left for maybe 2 or 3 days. He came back and they remain married almost 20 years later. A few months later I came into the kitchen and he's hanging over the sink crying, pouring out bottles of alcohol, sees me approach and threatens to kill himself. I grab the phone and call 911. He grabs it and hangs up. They call back but he tells them it was an accident. Police never came. I was so scared and wanted someone to come to help. I managed to get his keys for the gun safe away from him and kept them for years. I'm not sure where my mom or siblings were that night. It was never spoken about after I approached my mom until I was about 23 and family got worried about my drinking problem. I thought of it all as sort of a dream until then. They had me meet with him to talk about it and he cried and stuff and said how much he regretted his actions. I hated the whole notion. Now my mom chalks it up to I was physically curious and he had a drinking problem. Sorry not sorry, I have a 12-year-old stepchild and I don't care how freaking drunk I am. That's disgusting. So now, I don't speak to him at all. I wrote him a letter telling him to please stay away several years ago and that was that. I do still talk with my mom and see her occasionally. It has really complicated things and I miss being able to have big gatherings. All because of one person. I feel like he gets to have everything while I suffer. I'm still working through it all but I do believe I will continue to improve my mental health with diligent work. Most fricked up story I've read on this thread so far. I really hope you recover from come to terms with your trauma. Step-sibling or parent isn't the best way to phrase your title cause it sure sounds like you're looking for that kid that broke his arms and started fricking his mum. Every fricking thread. Nothing has ever happened, but have had some incredibly vivid and hot dreams about both my brother-in-law and father-in-law. Bent over a table kind of hot. Husband thought it was pretty funny, but he had a dream about my sister wearing thigh-high leather boots so I guess we're sort of even. Not me but a friend of mine. She had a boyfriend that she broke up with and got over. About 1 year later, her dad got a new girlfriend who happened to be my friend's ex-boyfriend's mother. My friend's ex-boyfriend's mom and her dad moved together and eventually got married. It is incredibly awkward at family events, but I think it is hilarious at the same time. LOL. Yes, a friend of yours, of course. I had, and sort of still am having, fricking with my stepsister. It all started when I was 15 and she was 17. We were both drunk and she asked me if I wanted to frick. Our parents were both out of the house. I of course said yes because I'd always thought was pretty hot. That night we shook the bed until we were done. She has the best pee I've ever gotten to be completely honest. We had fricked just about every weekend after that. It's been 5 years and sometimes we still hook up. I posted this one before. I had ons with a girl I met at a friend's party, then a few years later I was invited to my new girlfriend's parents' house for Thanksgiving and her sister walks in. Yep, I slept with my sister-in-law before I even met my ex. They don't look alike and nothing was ever said to my ex. When I was 22, I flew to another country to attend my cousin's wedding. My entire family stayed at this beautiful resort for a week where the wedding was taking place. On the first day there, I went down to the pool to get some sun and I noticed this gorgeous older man looking at me. I'd never met him before but he was clearly part of the wedding group as he was sitting with a few of my distant relatives. That night we all went out to dinner. There were at least 40 people at one of the resort restaurants. I was introduced by my cousin to the man I'd seen at the pool. He turned out to be my cousin's uncle. My uncle's wife's brother. No blood relation to me but I think this still qualifies. We had instant chemistry and I spent the rest of the night sitting across the table from him flirting. We spent a lot of time together with the rest of our family and by the night of the wedding, the physical chemistry between us was off the charts. We both had a few drinks in us and I left with him under the guise of him showing me the gorgeous bungalow style suite he had rented for the week. I was just in a normal hotel room and everyone had been raving about how awesome his suite was so nobody thought it was weird that we left together. We got to his suite and I honestly don't remember how it happened other than the first few minutes. I was sitting in a chair talking about a book I was reading when he grabbed the leg of the chair and pulled me closer to him. He put his hand on my leg and then it gets fuzzy. I know I went to his bed and undressed by myself. He came in and told me to put my clothes back on. I was confused and got dressed only to have him tell me to undress again. He wanted to watch. We had a amazing freaking session. He was gorgeous and experienced. 10/10 would do it again. We met up a few times once we were home, but it just sort of ended. Nobody knows about it, but I know my aunt would be furious if she ever found out. I see him occasionally at family events. He sat behind me at another wedding, and after, he pulled me into a corner and whispered that he couldn't concentrate on anything because my bare shoulders and back in my backless dress reminded him of that night. Suru steamy, and that tension is still there, but we act like nothing happened around others. K, if you're reading this, I still fantasize about you all the time. My bio dad died when we were very young. My mom remarried and we were eventually adopted by my stepdad, who had a son and daughter. Stepsister grew up with us, but stepbrother never lived with us, nor did we had a close relationship with him. No family holidays, etc. Growing up we had probably been around him twice. Fast forward decades later and stepsister is having a wedding. Stepbrother is there and he and my sister hit it off. Long story short, they fell in love and were a couple. My mom and stepdad were not happy at first but accepted it because they never grew up together as brother and sister. After some time they decided to marry but were not able to right away. Because my stepdad adopted us, then technically, in the eyes of law, he was our true blood brother. They could not legally marry. It finally took my stepbrother getting adopted by his stepdad in his 30s to get the okay to marry from the state. They are still together and no one thinks it's a big deal anymore. It's not really me who had fricked an in-law, but I need to get this off my chest and I think it kind of fits here. If not, I'm really sorry. Both my and my boyfriend's parents got divorced shortly after we were born. His mother married again and my father moved in with his girlfriend and their kid a few years ago. My boyfriend's father and my mother are both single, or were until about a week ago. His dad was a professional musician before his band broke up, and my mother occasionally sings at weddings, funerals or small concerts. So when she needed someone to sing a duet with her for a friend's wedding, we suggested his father. Little did we know that they would end up dating. We started suspecting it when she visited him more than necessary to rehearse the duet, and now she confirmed it to me. Needless to say, the situation is a bit awkward. I don't have anything against it per se, but it's all really strange and I just hope they never want to get married. Not me, but a lady who works at my local dive bar was married to this dude, had a son with him, then left the dude for his brother. Now, they also have a son together. Their sons eventually asked what they were to each other after being raised as half-brothers, with a disclaimer, so the parents all talked it out and agreed that they should be called Bruzins. When I was 15, I lost my virginity to my older sister. There had been some physical tension between us for part of that summer that I was visiting her, and her family, partially instigated by her husband, after some drinking, as are many of these things. What started as some drinking and a truth or dare game ended with a threesome. It was also the only physical experience I've had involving another man. There were a few more times things happened between us that summer, but after I went home, we never discussed it again. Nobody in my family knows, and her now ex-husband hasn't told anyone that I know of either. The only other person I have ever told was my wife. She was surprisingly okay with it and didn't ever say anything to my sister about it. I think living in a different state from my sister had helped decrease any lasting effect it may have had in our relationship as siblings. I lost my virginity to a girl I grew up hanging out with. Our moms were best friends. Years later her parents got divorced and my mom married her dad. So, what I'm about to type is 100% true and I've never told anyone online about it. It doesn't really fit the topic 100% because it isn't technically stepsister. This is a long story but I'll try to keep it short. So, my best friend when we were growing up got a new girlfriend we met at a fair. They hung out a lot but never were officially dating. One day she asked to hang at my place till he was off work. Not abnormal because my house was close to his. Long story short, she comes on to me, tells me they're just friends. Me being a frisky little 15-year-old frick believe her, and we did the deed. To keep this section brief, and not look like a complete jackass, I told my friend immediately after and we're cool. Fast forward a few years later, I finally turn 18 and with that, get the ability to unseal my birth records. I'm adopted from birth for your information. Always had a nagging suspicion that I might have met someone related to me and not known it. Luckily I meet my bio family and they live in Texas. So I actually never really could have met anyone. Turns out my bio dad killed himself on my 18th birthday, so that kinda blows. Big important time in my life but neither here nor there. I ask about his family, and I apparently have a couple half siblings but none that we were in contact with, so I'll let it go. A few years later, I pretty much just gradually drop connection with my bio family. Keeping up with two families is hard, and my adoptive family who I consider my real family was going through some crap with cancer. Randomly though I get a call. My half-sister died in a train accident where her friend tried to race a train. My dad apparently got my mom pregnant the same time as he got one of her other classmates pregnant so they kept up. She saw on Facebook her kid at my dad's side had died, and let me know since she was my half-sister. Any guess as to who it was? Yep, I banged my half-sister. No one knows but me and a few select friends. Definitely kinda cool to get this off my chest since it's such a crazy occurrence. Well, my sister was dating our stepbrother for a few months. It sounds weird, and our extended family, who are all pieces of crap anyways, made their opinions known, but realistically it wasn't that weird. Our parents got divorced in our teens, and we were all in our mid-20s when our mom married his dad. We never knew him as a brother of any sort, so it was only weird if you were looking at the literal names of the relationship. Shame is, our extended family made my sister feel horrible about it. They're the same kind of Bible thumping folks that are only Christian on Sunday, but want to have a holier than thou attitude towards everyone that isn't in their clique. I don't have a problem with religion, mind you. I have a problem with buttholes, and hiding behind faith isn't going to change what you are. Not me but my best friend in high school got into a relationship with her 25-year-old stepbrother when she was 14. At the time we were all very excited by the gossip but in hindsight, it looks absolutely horrifying. It started with flirting and then one night he came into her room and, seeing as they didn't have condoms, rode back doors with her. That was her first physical experience. She'd never so much as been fingered before. They then began regularly fricking and calling each other boyfriend and girlfriend. She would come into school every day and tell us what physical stuff they got up to the night before. I can't really pick a worst part but here are a select few horrifying aspects. He was a Marine and would send chain mails with his Marine mates containing hilarious jokes like what's the best thing about fricking a 5-year-old? Hearing her pelvis snap. Her dad found out and did nothing. Decided she was old enough at 14 to decide for herself. Wasn't at all bothered that his 25-year-old stepson had gone uninvited into his daughter's bedroom and woken her up for fricking. Everyone else's parents also knew and did nothing. Her older sister knew and did nothing. Naturally, he lost interest as she got older and more mature and he cheated on her when she was 18. With a 15-year-old, she didn't adjust well going forward. So this isn't one of those cases where you can be like but it seems like it didn't do her any harm either. She was really messed up for years. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.